Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for those who are here with us on campus and those of you who are joining us online. My name is John King, and I'm an Associate Course Director of English here at Full Sail. And I'm also the host of the world's greatest writing podcast, the Drunken Odyssey. I've proven that it's true. I'm hosting this session titled The Future of Serialized Media. Please put your hands together and help me welcome our panelists. All right. Come on, people. Justin Connors, who is the co-creator and director of the comic web series Fauxtography, and who is also a senior video editor at Platinum Creative here at Full Sail.
Yeah.
Sean Kantrowitz, who is a writer, producer, creative consultant, and also a co-creator of the comic series Fauxtography, and that's F-A-U-X-ography. Lee Rosario, who is co-owner of North Avenue Studios, where he works in operations and engineering, and who's also a lab specialist for session recording and advanced session recording here at Full Sail. North Avenue is a studio that presents the Off the Avenue web series of live music. And Ash Sevilla, a film graduate from 2000, who is the host of the Nerd Appropriate and the Rated NA podcast, and is also a community manager for the independent game studio N-Space. All right, so Justin and Sean, I thought I would begin with you guys. How did your web series start, and what made you want to do it?
It was one of the things, me and Sean worked together, and at the time, years ago, we just constantly, you meet, I was like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and Sean and I, one day were like, let's just do a show, let's just make a show, and this was before web series were big, this was before Instagram was big, this was, and we were just like, let's just, get together, make a show, and Sean was like, all right, well, let's do it, and I was like, oh, you write it, and he said we wrote it, so I told him that I was like, I wanted to do something about, and again, this was before Instagram was what it is now. I was like, I wanted to do a show about something where a guy just took Instagram way too seriously. And that idea got pitched, and Sean just kind of ran with it.
It's true. All of that happened. And so we just sort of made a comedy series about something that we could all relate to, which is being, in a creative field and kind of seeing how the playing field is sort of even, and how, in maybe years to come, as we sort of saw, people with a cell phone could be taking photos just like an actual photographer would be, and how would that feel for a photographer, and where is that line, what separates the professionals from the dabblers? And that's kind of the gist of what the show is about.
And it's funny.
I could vouch for that. So, could you talk a little bit about how it's being a web series has helped you professionally, and how that meets your goals?
The big thing about web series now, and with what you see a lot online, is a lot of people, when they hear the term web series, when they think about making a web series, they're usually just trying to throw something together real quick, where they're like, we can just throw these things together and we can use it as like a demo piece or something like that. And I think when we started this, that was an idea. It was just, let's just make something, and then I told Sean, I was like, we have to take it seriously, or else when people see it, they'll think it's amateur. And that's a big thing, is like, everything has to be thought of as if every episode was more of something you would see on television. And if you don't do it that way, it ends up coming across very amateurish, and people don't like it. And I think going forward, that's been a big thing, is always making sure that when you are going to make something, even if it's going to be something that you are going to throw up there, just put your most into it, because people will see it and they will appreciate that.
It's kind of ironic, because even on Instagram now, as it's sort of become way more legitimized than it was when we first created it, there are people who do amazing things because they put a lot of thought into, how they're shooting it and what they do with it. And that's sort of what we did with the web series, because now anybody can make a show. It doesn't take anything to upload to YouTube, but, I think what sort of has been one of our motives has been to make sure that it looks good and it really has that quality that it could be on television.
Yep. And it's something you'll see. Anybody here who's ever watched a web series, you always notice that you'll watch it and just go, why does it sound bad? Why does it, it's because the person normally just didn't say, let's just do it right. That's not just throw it together. So.
Well, and it helps if you have certain skill sets to actually deliver on all those.
Yes, but I agree 100%. But there's things you can still develop those skill sets, and you can because especially if you're doing your own web series, you're doing it on your time, and you can take as long as you want. And that's the thing we've done with this too. Is like you don't
real.
have to rush it. You don't have to be like, oh, we shot it, let's just put it up. If you shoot it and you have a friend who edits it, and you guys aren't laughing, and you're just like, oh, this isn't. Just reshoot it. Keep shooting it and keep it until you get it right. Because if you're not entertaining yourself, other people won't be entertained. And if you can sit in a room with a bunch of people and they kind of chuckle at something, then it's usually pretty funny. But don't just shoot it and go, it's done. Like, if it doesn't work, just reshoot it. It doesn't hurt to do something again. And keep failing and failing until it ends up being right.
Yeah, there's a tendency to feel like it's old because you may have lived with it for so long, but to the public who hasn't been sitting with it, it's not going to be old to them. So in our case, we spent quite some time, and for us, we've lived with it, but now it's being, delivered to an audience and they're seeing it for the first time, and that, interjects new life into it.
Well, being in charge of producing the series, that also gives you the freedom, not just in terms of taking your time, but also with content. If you had to get this greenlit for, a TV station, I imagine you would have a really difficult time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But that's the beauty of right now is that I don't think in our, the reason why people come to a place like this is that you're wanting to kind of learn how to make it on your own. You want to learn how to end up putting it out somewhere where there's YouTube, there's all these other places. You can make something, and you technically can make your own television station. You don't really have to think that you're going to go ahead and put it on NBC or ABC or like that. Was it Broad City?
Yeah.
I mean, they started as a web series, and it's, they're now on Comedy Central. They didn't plan to be on Comedy Central, but now Comedy Central wants them.
It's one of the most critically acclaimed shows, and Amy Poehler is producing it, and they got their start on YouTube.
You just make the thing that you like, and if you keep making it, it's good, people will notice, and then the people in these places will end up going, let's pick that up. We don't want to make that. Let's just take that.
Okay. So Lee, your series, Off the Avenue, what you're doing is you're presenting live music, unadulterated, no auto-tune, no studio tricks. Here's what live musicians sound like.
Right.
And so you're building a brand by focusing on that. Can you talk a little bit about how that series came about?
Good question, definitely. It actually started over kind of a conversation with my studio partner. He's actually the genius branch of the two of us when it comes to that part. I'm good in the technical side. That's our work relationship. But it started over a conversation maybe 5 years ago, and he was basically kind of pointing out a series from the basement. That's a big series. It's our big inspiration for that. But it was basically a beer and saying, hey, I think we need to bring, artists in here, and we need to show them in a way that their fans can see them not only in a studio, but we want to have a better than album, or if not equal to album quality in the studio without the tricks. You know what I mean? So like you said, no auto-tune, no fixing timing, which obviously would, mess with the timing of the video edits and stuff like that. And that's pretty much been our focus since we started the series, and we've acquired not only some of the best talent locally, but some pretty major talent, nationally and worldwide. And just to kind of speak to what you guys were talking about, it's funny how on your end you can, if it's not good, you can reshoot. We have the specific challenge of we only get one shot. Especially when these bands are on tour, and we only have them for a small window. We have that moment, and we have that specific moment to make magic, and then the editing happens after they leave.
And so the freedom of doing this on the web also, I imagine, it seems to go against the spectacle of mainstream pop music,
right,
and seems to be providing a pretty solid avenue for
right,
people who are more interested in the musicianship.
Right, exactly, and I think that's why things like YouTube, Blip, Vimeo, all these places you can upload high quality content, without any kind of broadcast network standards and stuff like that. I think that freedom has allowed us to kind of venture out of the norm, especially being, out of the TV, radio broadcast type of world. And so, yeah, definitely.
And I imagine there's a hunger for that content.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, completely. Right now we're looking at about 3 million and counting views total for the channel. So there's definitely a growing awareness of it, and people definitely want more of it. So, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Not too bad.
And so how did you build your brand? Because I imagine it was something close to nothing when it started.
Yes. Well, this one, and I'm just putting it out there, that one definitely, I pay homage to Dave because he is the genius behind that one. All the branding, all the behind the scenes, meetings and driving out to people. He's actually at South by Southwest right now, specifically for Off the Ave, and he's recording 30 bands as we speak. So wish him, lots of luck.
At the same time?
One back to back. If it was at the same time, I would. My hats off to him. But literally in hour intervals. But the branding was definitely something that Dave was conscious about from the beginning, and it's basically everything we do is about being true to the brand. You're true to the style of what you're putting out there. You're true to the aesthetic, right? So the visual, the certain filters that we use, the logos, whenever we do press releases or any kind of public announcement or any partnerships, which we have that material, in place because he's very, very keen about how we come off to people, yeah.
And when you get an opportunity like hanging out at South by Southwest to get content,
Right.
if you get 30 chances to get 30 great bands, then maybe you don't sleep, but you take advantage of that opportunity since, you are competing with, the big corporations. And so in order to get your content noticed, I imagine the drive there,
Yes.
that the passion of ownership has a lot to do with that.
Right, exactly. And there's definitely, there's years of stories that, when it comes to passion, but absolutely, we look at people like Audio Tree, which is one of our main competitors in Chicago, and you look at series like La Blogatech, which is another one we look at a lot, and they all have a very distinct style and a distinct identity. So especially for something, South by Southwest, and we got sponsorships and all that, like our identity is probably the biggest thing we have out there.
Well, with my podcast, The Drunken Odyssey, I go and report at Miami Book Fair International, and I think I was scheduled for 11 interviews.
Wow.
Over 2.5 days. And I don't know when I'm going to get to talk to the people necessarily, and sometimes the schedules get rearranged, and I've got 15 minutes from the moment I'm introduced to these people who have no idea what my show is. Right? For them, it's like blind speed dating. But okay, John Waters at 11 o'clock, okay, and I'm frazzled after that. But I get so much content out of that. So yeah, you just more caffeine.
And Red Bull.
Yeah.
So Ash, could you talk a little bit about the Nerd Appropriate and the Rated NA podcast, and talk a little bit about how that got started?
Well, geez, I graduated here a very long time ago, and I am a prime example of what to not do with your Full Sail degree. Not in a bad way. I just I graduated and I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do with myself. I graduated with a film degree, and I took a bunch of little jobs, PAing and stuff, and then I realized that I was lazy and I didn't like lifting things. I also didn't really like being told what to do very much, so that didn't work out for me very well. So I went back to school and I actually became a history teacher, which I did for 6.5 years. But while I was a history teacher, I had this undying love of pop culture and film and video games, and it's something I'd had since I was a very little kid. So that never went away, and I've always been a big con kid, meaning like I'll go to San Diego Comic-Con and PAX and basically every convention that I could afford to bring myself to. And I was sitting around with my buddies, Matt and Scott, who I think are watching from home, and about 4.5 years ago, we said, well, why don't we use what little free time we have to actually start a show? And we brainstormed for a long time and came up with a concept of just doing, a fun kind of salute to pop culture and a salute to all the things we loved. So we talk about video games every week and movies, and then it kind of transitions slowly into getting guests on the show and going out to cons and talking to lots of people. So we've been doing it for about 4.5 years. We're coming up on episode 200 in a couple weeks, and now at this point we've talked to, I want to say, almost every studio in gaming, and we've had dozens upon dozens of different guests from all over the world on. So it's been a huge experience, and that actually ended up helping me get a job in games. So it's sort of a Cinderella story for those of you who want to start a podcast. Eventually stuff can happen. So I just got hired late last year at Endspace, and I'm working on Sword Coast Legends, which is the next big Dungeons and Dragons RPG. So I'm helping there as community manager. So
Awesome.
yeah, it is pretty. I'm excited.
And so one of the great things about being able to do things on the web like this is, and this anticipates one of tomorrow's panels, but you don't need a ton of money
Yes.
as long as you're smart.
Right.
And as long as you have these skills or can learn them to produce proficient work that people can appreciate. So as long as your content is something people want, it can get you out there and serve your professional goals as a stepping stone, which almost sounds insulting to the work that we're doing, because it's like, well, it's a lot of work for a stepping stone, but it's one more part of what we might call our professional portfolio.
No, you're absolutely right. And, speaking to lack of money and such for advertising, we literally in 4.5 years have had a close to $0 advertising budget. Our PR and marketing campaign has consisted of us going out to different conventions and different shows and shoving a business card in somebody's face and having a conversation with them. And that's really how we've ended up getting so many solid guests over the years, is we've actually gone to conventions, talked to people, introduced ourselves, and sending an email to someone that you want to have on your show or that you want to get to know only goes so far in the industry. You really have to get out there and be personable and let the person put a name with a face. And when that happens, and then you do send that email, they'll know it's from the person that they met in a bar or wherever it might be. So that if you have no money, which as a teacher I had no money, that goes a very long way. So absolutely.
Yeah, you should definitely. That's a thing that me and Sean talked about all the time too. Is the fact that we had same thing. We had no money for our show, but it's talking about skill sets and all that. It's kind of finding people who believe in what you're doing enough to kind of go the extra effort, and then finding creative ways to get around certain situations. A lot of it's just asking. A lot of it's just going to people and talking to them. Like, we had to shoot in a movie theater that I never thought we'd be able to get into, and somehow, some way, Sean convinced a guy to let us shoot in a movie theater. What I mean?
There's a slight caveat there, and I'm going to put him on blast.
Yeah.
We went to the movie theater and just asked the guy, and I was prepared to get the runaround, and the guy that I talked to happened to be the manager, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll open it up for you on Saturday. It'll be fine. Just get here early." And I was like, "Perfect." And then we showed up that morning. He was like, "Yeah, it's going to be $50." So it's I totally would have given you the $50 too if you had just told me that in advance, and we still did give him,
which is one of our biggest expenses.
That was the biggest expense that we had.
Full out
this
expense
guy
besides food and
tried to pull a fast one. But no, I mean, the personal connections are the most important things for anything that you're trying to do in whatever the trajectory of your career is going to be. And I know that that's something that they stress to you guys. And even during Hall of Fame, talk to people, meet different people, exchange ideas. Getting somebody to like you and believe in what you're doing is going to be so invaluable, whether you're doing a podcast, web series, film shoot, whatever. And if you're able to do that, you find that having a budget is not always the highest priority. It's about who's in your social circle, your network.
Right.
Talking about, again, because me and Ash were talking about this too, always kind of keep your eye, because everybody in here is in school, I would assume, for the most part. You always got to keep your eye out for the people who are good at the thing you need. And by need, it's because you all want to grow together. Before me and Sean worked together, I knew I needed someone who could write. I can shoot, I can edit, but I need to write. I need somebody who could write, and we just happen to be friends that work together. But like Ash was saying, or we were talking about the podcast and how finding that person to constantly be like the post person. If you don't find someone who wants to do that, they'll fall. It'll fall apart. So you have to always kind of keep your eyes out for the people who like doing the things that you need to grow. And you will find that here. Is you just look around at everybody.
I think to add to that, it's funny how it translates through all sorts of, industry, entertainment industry. And I actually, I had a conversation with Dave the other night, over beer 12. And, obviously we get very social at that point.
I get real social.
Extremely. And it's funny because, I'm just like, I'm telling Dave, I'm like, look, I'm about to go out here and I'm talking to you guys. And, we've been lucky to have bands like the 1975 and Edward Sharpe and Lucero, Cursive, Minus the Beer, like these great bands. And, he's in a lot of the front end of that. And, I'm like, what's your best advice? I'm speaking vicariously through you when it comes to these things that, obviously we didn't start off with a budget either. We're in the same boat. And I think the best thing I've heard, was one of his, sayings is that everything he does and everything we do happens organically. You know what I mean? So when you're talking to a prospective client, you're talking to a prospective artist, you're not really approaching them like, hey, here's me. Whoa, you know what I mean? Like these are guys that are very, especially in the music world, they're very guarded about what they do. And it's a very, you just have to relate to them as people, and it's amazing the things you can do when you relate to somebody on a personal level, and they'll open up, they'll open up. And as long as you're working in a spirit of creativity and what you do with your talents is to the best of your ability, we've had very good success, along with everybody else here. And I think it translates very well across, all types of entertainment,
Well, and Full Sail's emphasis on professionalism in particular rings very true to my own experience in that knowing how the appropriate way to get a hold of someone and then being nice and brief and clear about what it is that you would like.
Goes a very long way. It really does.
Yeah.
Yes. 2 sentences, just say that you love their stuff, you want to talk to them, and sometimes they'll say yes.
One more sentence to prove that you've read their stuff.
Yeah.
Not just, hey, I love your stuff, babe, but
That's true.
Yeah.
And even if they say no, it's not the last time. Like
Yeah.
you might have another chance. Just don't try to blow it all out at them because you think it's that one shot. Like you never know. You might see that person again. Just let them kind of remember you, but don't be like, whoa, that's that dude. Don't talk to him.
It's that guy who wouldn't stop talking the last
He
time.
really likes my stuff. He tells me all the time.
well, Ash, could you tell maybe a story about one of your interviews?
Yeah, well, this is actually funny. I wasn't expecting this, but yeah, we have a really kind of a great community at Nerd Appropriate. It's not huge, but it's been slowly growing over the years. And again, all organic. We're not paying for it. It's just people that slowly end up liking our stuff over the years. And a couple, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, one of our followers, tweeted that we should have Freddie Prinze Jr. on the show, just as like, he was going to be a voice actor in some games coming up, and I just, I tweeted at him kind of randomly. I was like, hey, would you like to come on? And he was like, sure. And it was a really fun conversation with the guy, and it was just a very simple, organic experience that shows that social media goes a very, very long way. If you're not, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, so I won't, but if you're not an a-hole, that's really important for you guys to understand. Even if you use social media constantly, sort of like I do, you have to be very, very aware of what you're saying all the time because people are constantly reading it. Like Freddie Prinze Jr. wasn't someone who was following our show or anything like that, but he reads our tweets, he reads Twitter. So, just be very, very mindful of that because it will come back to haunt you. So yeah.
Well, one of the things that keeps coming up, one of the themes is community, and it seems like all of your work has started with conversations.
Yeah, that is really true. It's funny, one of my first times actually kind of wiggling my way into the video games industry, I went to like a pub crawl type thing that Harmonix was doing almost 5 years ago at this point. And, I was just a fan of Harmonix, a huge fan of Rock Band, obviously a huge fan of really everything they've ever done. And I was just there, and their community manager was there. Allison Thresher, who doesn't do community stuff anymore, but she's still there. And she was literally the first person I handed my business card to ever. And for those of you who don't have business cards and think that they're lame, get them. Put all your social stuff on there, your Twitter handle, your Xbox Live gamer tag, everything about you that you don't care about sharing with people. Put it on a card and get ready to hand it to people all the time, because that's how you make friends in the industry, and that's how you end up getting a job in the industry. It's not just about marketing a skill set. It's also about, in a lot of ways, marketing yourself. And I hate to use like marketing terminology because I don't like it, but you are creating a brand. You are selling yourself to different communities and such. So get cards, pass them out, talk to people, be personable. And when I say go talk to people, don't be like a super creep. Like don't talk for like a half an hour. Make sure your breath smells good. Just that's very important.
That thing you did, it was great.
That was awesome.
No, really, it was great.
It was really great.
Don't hold up the autograph line.
Don't do that. Make it brief.
Well, so much of what having a brand and building a brand is about is simply doing quality work and then having a recognizable name and logo and location that people can go to. So, just doing my show over 2.5, getting on 3 years now, sometimes people talk to me and they're like, "Oh, you're that guy." I'm like, "I guess I am that guy." I've got a pretty definable logo, and I really needed, I didn't say, "Well, mine is a creative writing podcast, like the Drunken Odyssey." Okay, like
It's a great name, though.
not likely to forget
very good.
that.
It's a really good name.
I did a lot more drinking in the early
4.5
days of the
years
show.
ago, we thought Nerd Appropriate sounded like an awesome name. Now all of us at the site were like, why did we ever do that to ourselves? It's too late to turn back. We could have been something cool like Switchblade Attack Squad or something.
We came up with photography. I didn't know. First of all, I didn't know this was like a thing that's like a thing, but like a photographer was like a word already. I didn't know that, and
It's been the bane of our existence.
so,
quite
no,
honestly.
it's funny
It was,
was-
Fauxtography.
yeah.
It's like,
No matter how many times we've had to, I thought everybody. If you show somebody a faux hawk, they say it correctly. If you show somebody faux fur, they say it correctly. You put the words faux and photography together, and people just go Fauxtography. I don't know why. I have yet to figure it out. I mean, I've been asked and asked. I was like, I thought it was pretty plain, like faux is faux. But yeah, so
doing panels like this will hopefully educate
Yeah.
the world. You guys can all spread the message, and we can correct this very serious issue.
everybody here thought it was photography, correct? Yes.
Well, nobody's
Okay,
gonna
good.
say no.
Somebody back there. I see him. No.
So it does help to sort of market
Yes.
test this before you float it out.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Would have been a good idea.
I thought it sounded fantastic.
I mean, I still like the name.
Yeah,
So some of you have already addressed this, but how does this meet your sort of long-term professional goals?
You guys want to go?
you want to start?
Yeah, well, I mean, just for me, I sort of had a background as being a writer first, and then sort of branched more out into video. And I think that the biggest hello, oh, I thought that cut out. The biggest thing for writers is that everybody's a writer, but that nobody's actually doing. Like you'll meet 10 people who are writers, and 9 of them usually, "Oh, well, show me what you've done." "Oh, well, I don't really like have anything I could show you. I'm working on it." So most of the time, it's really like you're not actually a writer. You're entertaining the concept of being a writer, like very heavily, and we've all been guilty of it. And for me, in terms of my professional goals and what I was, wanting to get from this, just as a foundation, was it's cool to actually have something, so that now we've created something that can be a springboard to a lot of things that we want to do, whether it is web series or television or film. It's just, in a way, it's kind of like a more expanded version of the business card. If you have a business card, great, but if you can also say, and you can also look this up here, that's like a piece of work that sort of stands for what you're capable of and what you do. I don't know if that answered the question or not. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. My whole editing. I like building a team. That's a good thing about when you start to work on projects like this. You start to figure out who your team is and who can really help you get to the level you are trying to get to, and who you want to always kind of work with in the future. And we're lucky enough that we've found that for the most part with almost everybody that we work with. But yeah, I love, like I said, I didn't do comedy before this. I thought it was I'm more of a cliche action guy for the most part.
You wanted so many fight sequences
We
in all
wanted
of these
them, so-
episodes, but I was like, let's back off.
But no, it was the thing of, now I've done something I haven't done before, and learning from that. It's all a learning process. And if you like to shoot and you like to edit, that's what you should be doing. You should be shooting. You should be editing. Just like if you're a writer, you should be writing. There really is no reason not to be. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm always progressing.
Cool. Well, for me, I don't know, like future-wise, it's pretty cool because you can go any which way, it feels like. If I had kind of a list of things where I'd like to see, not only off the app, but, the people involved with it, where they're growing and where they're going to go. I mean, obviously, bigger bands, that fall into what we believe, We'd like to expand the series to kind of evolve again organically, where we're, introducing new features. Like, for example, we just started introducing something as basic as doing the band, kind of candid photo shoot before the actual video shoot. Just evolving little things like that forward to create that much more of a unique brand identity and stuff like that. So in terms of where I see, my future with that is, engineering new bands, being, part of the forefront in terms of what's the next cool thing we can throw into this series. What's the next place that we can get into? Like I said, we're in South by right now. Well, Dave's in South by, but what's the next, concert series, or what's the next, industry event that we can be a part of? And it's kind of a day-to-day thing. We have a general idea, but we're also very good about just going with the waves, because I think these types of things evolve, again, on a moment's notice. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, really, but I think we have a general idea, in that realm. We're going to be off the app, but a bigger or better version of it in the future.
You have a brass ring? Do you have like a band that you're like that? I mean, obviously there's a million bands. You're probably like, yeah, but like, is there one that you've been setting on like, man, I just want to get them?
Ricky Martin. No, not.
I'm sure he's available.
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Like a sound that you're just like, I need to hear them live.
I know a guy who knows Freddie Prinze Jr. If you, I don't know if he's doing anything right now.
Yeah, if
Speed dial. Got him on speed dial. Yeah.
Okay. So, and Ash got a day job.
Yeah. So yeah, I left teaching late last year. Got hired over N-Space, which is actually a local independent game company. They're awesome. They're a small team, and they're working right now with the Dungeons and Dragons guys to make Sword Coast Legends, which, as a fan of games, is a fan of like games like Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and Dragon Age and all those awesome games. I kind of went to the bathroom all over myself when I even had an interview. But again, talking about connections, there's a little bit of nepotism involved. I've known the art director over at N-Space for close to 20 years. That wasn't my only in. The guys that ran N-Space looked at my podcast. They listened to my podcast to make sure that I wasn't an a-hole. And not really the show and everything I had done for the show was my resume for getting the job that I really wanted. And, you guys talked about a little bit earlier about sort of, where you want to be in the industry. The good thing is I can still do the podcast. It's still sort of like, my baby. And then I'm doing, my community management over at N-Space for Sword Coast Legends at the same time. So I kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds, but yeah.
Well, business, including show business, it's very social in the way that it works.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the refrains, and Justin and Sean, you haven't talked about this too much, the evolution. Once you've built something, you sort of see where it goes. And so partly I'm wondering, like, will the word podcast seem like an antique 5 years from now?
Actually, not to.
I realize that's a weird question for you two.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But just
No, what's really funny it's funny you mentioned that is that I just read this article today, really good one about people. There's a thing about they're saying we should kill off the web series, and so naturally I read it and I'm like, no, we shouldn't do that. But the thing that they're saying is that people are putting stuff online and calling it a web series, in which when you hear that, there's automatically this stigma to it, where it's like, you see maybe it's this kitschy little thing, and they may, like I say, they may not have taken it seriously. It might have a funny thing or two in it. But like even for like podcasts, the words themselves already have this stigma of almost being not at the higher level of, say, like a radio show like Howard Stern or a comedy show on another network. So it's almost as now that because of the things on the internet being just as widespread as something on television, we should just start referring to everything as the same thing. A podcast is a podcast, but literally it's just like anything else on, like a radio station or on a Sirius, and web series now, quote unquote, are just like, I watch all my shows on the web, you know what I mean? So is Arrow a web series to me now? It could be, you know what I mean? Like it's a good show. It's interesting. Yeah, it's a great show.
It's a good show.
But I watch it on the CW app. Does that make it a web series? Because you can literally watch it the same place you can watch our show. So
the lines are getting blurred too, because just look at Netflix and all. Like I recently just got hooked on Tina Fey's new comedy that she did, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and they developed that for NBC, and
Also
then
a good Sorry, it's a really good show.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
I hear good things.
I'm in love. But yeah, and it actually didn't wind up going to NBC, and Netflix kind of snatched it and they put it up there. I kind of almost think of it. Obviously, I wasn't around in the early days of cinema, but like how there were like silent films and then like talkies. Like eventually, it probably got stupid to refer to like a film as a talkie, because they're all talking. And I feel like sort of similarly, it's like all of this content is now available. Like podcasts aren't this like obscure thing that you have to be like a nerd to know about or anything. No offense to nerd appropriate, but
All right, none taken.
Yeah, but it just sort of, and like Justin was saying, we all watch stuff on the web anyway. So yeah, I sort of feel that, I think that it's just gonna all meld into one thing, and that we'll just stop using like silly titles.
Yeah, because like House of Cards, that's a web series. You know what I mean? Like it's something you watch on the web. What makes the difference?
You just add one final thing. We really stopped referring to our show as a podcast a couple years ago, because there is sort of a negative, social stigma attached to it. You go up to somebody like, come on our podcast. You just sound like you don't know what the hell you're doing. So we just started using come on our show. And then people are like, what kind of show it is? Like, well, we record it and we release it to the web. So it's a podcast, but we don't really use podcasts anymore. And it wasn't even really necessarily a conscious conversation we had. We just started, slowly shifting over. So.
Well, I wave the podcast flag proudly, but
Stand strong.
But in a lot of cases, the blurring has to do with simply Netflix deciding it wanted to go into the TV show and movie business rather than simply the, distribution of such.
Right.
Do you think that the opportunities, right now it seems like certain web series are feeders for mainstream entertainment. Do you see that expanding, or is it probably going to shrink up, do you think?
I think it's just getting started. We're at this point. There are things being put out there that are getting so much attention, being watched more than shows on big networks. And I can only go to action things. Like, what is that Dragon Ball Z thing? Got like 9 million views. I know how many shows wish they had 9 million people watching them. It's if you're thinking like it's gonna get any smaller, it's not. People want to watch stuff when they want to watch it and what they want to watch. The thing is, you just got to give it to them. They don't want to have to go to one place to find it. So I think anything on the web is where everything is going.
Yeah, I think it's where it's going, where it's at.
So you think everything's going to be drawn to the web rather than in the other direction?
I feel that all, like even like cable boxes, all they are going to be portals to web-based things. Like no one's going to want to just have channels anymore. They're going to boot up their thing and go, let me find my favorite YouTube series.
Yeah, you're absolutely
like
right.
If you have, what are they called, like a Chromecast, whatever these things are, like that's what people want, just a thing that will get me to the thing I want to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the technical name for it, too.
Thing box.
Yeah. Better patent that.
That's good. Yeah.
I did.
So what excites you about the future in terms of the opportunities that you've seen and that you see in the future?
It's amazing. Like anybody can make anything, and like not saying that it's necessarily always going to be the top quality, but it can be. And like it's such an exciting time. Like something I love about podcasts is that they are everything that I always was frustrated about radio interviews. They totally negate that. Like it's conversations that can be as long as they want to be. They don't necessarily have to plug something in, particular. They're free to say whatever they want. They can curse if they want to. They can get into things and not have to worry about rupturing, like feathers. What I love about what you guys do, your show is like, a return to what I loved about like MTV in the 90s, where it's like focusing on the music and the bands. And like then, because that became less popular, according to somebody in a boardroom, it all became other kinds of programming. But obviously there's still an audience for it if you have this if you have all of this audience to be able to come up with an idea of, hey, let's just make this show about this, and it could be funny, or we could do an action series, and we do it on our own, and we put it out. It's like I'm excited as somebody who's a creator, and I'm also excited as somebody who's on the receiving end of it, because it's so cool to me that you can get whatever you want. Like, it's amazing.
I mean, and even more interesting is that no one's alone if they like something. Like, say you like watching dogs paddle boat.
I love dogs paddling.
No, I'm saying like there is, guaranteed, aside from maybe a few topics, if you like something, there is a bunch of people out there that like it and probably go online, probably go, man, I want to watch that. As weird as that might be.
There's some crazy stuff on there too.
But like and like Sean was saying, it's like if you feel like you want to make a series about whatever it's going to be, more than likely if you put the effort, there it is. Maybe like if you put the effort into it, you're gonna find someone who likes it, and if they like it, they're gonna tell someone. So, just that we always talk about here. It's like, do the thing you love. If you love something and you really want to make it, put your all into it, and people will enjoy it.
I think it's pretty interesting when I think of the future of the media that we're putting out, and I feel like there's obviously this is like a almost like a gold rush in a sense, because anybody has the ability to get out there and make a name for themselves. I think the part where it comes into it depends, and I'd be interested to see how that evolves is, unless there's any kind of regulations that start popping up, or some kind of corporatization of things, in terms of, because obviously, advertisements are a very real thing with YouTube videos and stuff like that. I feel on a creative end, as long as that doesn't get in the way of somebody truly wanting to create something unique, I think there's going to be just a vast world of media that anybody can create anything with. Again, as long as that doesn't get in the way. But I'll be curious to find out what happens in the next few years with major corporations, especially looking at advertising and, how just out of obscurity, somebody can be in their bedroom 1 minute and the next minute they're a Vine star, or they're like a YouTube, famous person. So it's really, it's pretty cool. At the same time, it's also one of those kind of like the stock market. Let's see where it goes. But
that's the best part about it is like right now there is no golden key. There's no like this is guaranteed. And this is why,
right.
And I have to say this about like web series and all that are hard to even get money for, is that there is no thing you can go, if I make this, X, Y, and Z are going to watch it. There's no ROI on this, as the term gets used. Like,
right.
But the thing is that the potential is there
right.
for the entire planet to see it. So it's like, why not just go for it?
Yeah.
So.
Right, exactly. Without, like you said the word that I loathe is the boardroom. Without 12 executives like, well, is this guy? Are we going to make him famous or not? You can make yourself famous if you do it right. You could definitely do things on your own terms, and that's promising to me in the future.
And even if they get their like claws on this and it becomes, like you were saying, like standardized, I just feel like the creative spirit is always gonna like find a way, like, and I can envision like a future like where web series have been totally like, corporate now, and then like because how bands now will put out like vinyl is really popular, and bands even put out like cassette like music now. Like, what if in the future like web series are where it's at, and to escape sort of the throes of like the industry, people start making shows that you got to buy a cable box to watch this one. Yeah. Oh, dude, I have to buy a TV too? All right, yeah, man, I'll do it. I just love this stuff so much. I just feel like no matter what, there's always going to be a way that like the creative minds are just going to like run with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely a gold rush, as these guys were saying. But I think you have to be very sincere when you produce content. You have to really truly love it, because your audience will pick up. They'll pick up immediately if you are insincere. So do it because you love it. We did our show for maybe 3 years before we even got a sponsor for it, and that's every single week. Hours and hours every single weekend. And then Scott, who's going to be here talking tomorrow, edits for hours and hours and hours every week. And it was just, because we love doing stuff. So make sure that you're doing, if you do produce something, which everybody in here really should, and like immediately go out and just start making stuff. If you're not already, which a lot of you probably are. But yeah, do it because you love it, and then, be proud of it.
Well, one interesting thing about the gold rush is not necessarily everyone who went after the gold actually got rich or even paid the bills.
But they enjoyed the rush.
And
They
that was
enjoyed
gold.
the rush. But
Golden hearts.
one of the things that's important to emphasize is just your commitment over time.
Right.
Putting in the time consistently on this, I guess it's different for a web series, but producing a quality product over and over and over again that people then look forward to, so then you get crap if you miss an episode. Like if you have a bad week, people are like, you didn't release an episode, what's going on?
Yeah.
And it's funny, you said a key word in there, consistency, because that's definitely probably one of our main pillars. Is if we weren't consistent, then that's something that you'll find that consistency helps you let your eggs spread out, and get a greater return. It doesn't have to be monetary, but in terms of, oh, this looks like this video I just saw. Oh, wait, it's the same guy. And then suddenly the buzz, starts, generating. But that consistency is a big part of what we do, for sure.
I will definitely say on a web series side, especially having zero budget, consistency, you try to handle it as much as you can, but at some point, everybody has to start getting paid. People need to have jobs, and that's where it gets hard. We're scheduling. At one point, we're trying to schedule 6, 7, 8, 9 people's schedules all into one day. And if you can't get that all to happen, you just keep going and can it happen this week? No, not then you're already a week or two behind when you thought you'd have something out. So that is by far the biggest drawback for making a show, is trying. I mean, everybody always puts their all into it and shows up, but people have to work, and when they disappear, or people get haircuts. And you have to find a way to shoot them so you don't see that their hair is completely
It wasn't
different.
me. You just looked at me like I got a haircut.
Yeah.
He was talking about an actor in one of our episodes.
Because there was a month in between when we shot something, and the person had to get a haircut and do his job, and we're like, oh, well, you look completely different now. But that's things you can't control. But the fun part is it made a creative challenge. So.
None of you will ever notice it. That's how good it was.
It is
We
really
hit it. You will not notice that.
Yeah,
our
watch it to
actor,
find out.
Cut 6 inches off his.
But I will say, going forward, if we had more time and when we end up putting out more episodes, consistency is going to be a big thing, because people look forward to coming back, and the moment they feel like it's not there is where you start losing everyone.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of our big pillars too. Is we've rarely missed. Well, we've missed a couple weeks here and there, but it's pretty rare. And that was one of the things we said early on, is we just got to keep doing this no matter what. The first 20, maybe 25, 30 episodes were absolutely terrible. Please don't listen to them. But then, once we got a little bit better as time progressed, but, making sure that everybody's on board and doing it every single week, no matter how hard it is, that's really important. I'll get in trouble if I don't say this, but it's true. We have all three of us have spouses that are very understanding of half of our Saturday being taken away every single week. So make sure you have a support system too, because it takes a lot of time.
More time than you would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you start. I got started because someone said, oh yeah, no, this will be easy.
Not easy.
I think it's how they all start. Yeah. We'll just do this. No.
But one of the things that makes this possible is that, and this may not be in the thoughts of many of our young students, but technology has come so far, so that for a lot of us, just the technology we accumulate as people with these interests actually can make us look like pros if you do it right.
Right. Exactly. On a budget, definitely.
It's funny though, because that was Sean's thing is always about, even with the photography thing, was that it's hard to delineate at some points who is taking a picture who's taking a picture and actually getting paid for it, and who's taking a picture and just posting it on their Instagram and just saying like, look, I'm a photographer, but like, did you get paid for it? So where does that line? Because the picture looks just as good. So that's kind of the hard thing, is technology is blurring the lines, as we always say. But in the end, it's also, we get back to it, technology now is making it easier than ever to make good stuff. So it's like, it's a give and take, double-edged sword.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think we used Rock Band mics for the first 100 episodes of our show. And I'm telling you, the audio quality wasn't half bad. So kudos to Mad Cats.
Yeah, and then, for example, like, when we started the Off the App series, it was just one camera, a Canon, the T2i, and it just, that's something you can easily access, and if you can understand uploading to YouTube, basic video editing, stuff like that, it's pretty crazy how much, positive damage, not negative damage, of course, but like positive, coverage you can really put out there with just basic pieces of gear. I mean, granted, it doesn't hurt having $1 million studio, I'm not gonna lie, but that could have evolved anywhere because the idea was still there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And again, with the consistency and understanding, keeping things streamlined, the consistent talent. We've had a lot of great directors and engineers and interns and stuff like that help along the way with, over 200 episodes now. But again, that's all being done on a very minimal budget, and it's amazing because we've seen firsthand that on such a low budget, we still get as much play as some of the big boys,
And definitely the trick too is no matter how far technology can get you, the thing that you still have to do is appreciate the craft of whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
You can have an amazing camera, you can spend $5,000 on a lens. If you don't take the time to understand how to shoot, or even to shoot enough to kind of understand how to shoot, it's still not going to be what you want. You have to really dig in and learn the craft and actually, appreciate all the other aspects of it. So so pretty much you can get your level starting low to look better just by appreciating the technical, what's the word I just used? Yeah, that one. The technical, the craft of it. No matter what, even if it's a podcast, if it's this, like, you still have to see the craft that goes into it, respect that, and learn that, and then now you can kind of do it on a lower budget.
Well, early on in the podcast at Miami, I filmed a Martin Amos event that I had permission to do. And and this is going to make me sound like a dinosaur. I had a Sony Handycam with a miniature tripod, and it was in an auditorium where I could flip out the little desk on top of my lap, little tripod, and I closed it up so that it wasn't, distracting. And I had an audio feed for the PA, synced it all up later, put my logo on the front. It looks like I knew what I was doing, and I was just using, I knew I had the great audio, but besides that, Sony Handycam, and it looks professional, and I'm embarrassed to explain how I did it, because really...
Video toaster? Anybody remember those? No.
The what?
Remember video toasters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So...
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just one other thing I would add is that, like, the internet is also technology, and like, there's no excuse not to do awesome things because you could Google anything. Like, if you had, John's, dinosaur rig today, and you were like, how do I make this look amazing? Yep. You could probably Google it, and somebody has come up with a blog or a video and like, hey, these are the tools. This is how you make it look awesome. So, I mean, using all of the resources that are out there, there's no excuse not to be able to do something with what you've got, and with the, like you were saying, with the proper attention and the foundation of the craft of it, that's going to make it even better. And, not to say that it should never be a quantity over quality game. You always want to make sure your quality is good. But when I hear somebody has done 200 episodes of something, the last thing I'm thinking about is like, oh yeah, but the first 50 episodes probably weren't that great. I'm just thinking of, wow, 200, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like they know what they're doing.
It's a lot
That's
of
really great.
It's a lot of work, a lot of beer.
Yeah, there's 10 years is a good thing. It's like, oh, it's still going.
Yeah, but all that is just to say that having that, like, you know, accepting that it's going to be part of like your growth and your journey and what you're doing, like, and not being so caught up. Just do the best that you can with what you have, and recognize that with the consistency of doing it frequently, you're just going to get better and better. And nobody, I mean, if I had never heard of Nerd Appropriate before and I was like, man, they have 200 episodes, cool, let me start at number 1 and like go, it's probably not going to happen. I'm going to like look at the last 30, 40, you know, but they were able to get there because they put in all that work and they kept going with what they had.
Right.
Well, and putting your skills into practice like that on a regular basis,
Right.
yeah, gets you much more professional. And
Completely.
Yep.
well, one of my favorite filmmakers is David Lynch, and he's always had to work on a low budget because his work is crazy. I think that's the nicest way to put it. He's very strange.
Forward.
And so, amazingly, he doesn't have a big special effects budget, except for the one movie he wouldn't let them put his name on. And you know, his people will tell him, we can't do it on that budget. We don't. And so he goes, okay, well, come up with another solution. And actually, that turned into a form of fun for him, solving that problem of, okay, we can't afford to do that shot the way I wanted to do it, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. And for him, it's not a demotion, because the process of having to rethink the whole shot, what is it that I want to accomplish, for him turned into this new creative process rather than, oh, I can't have the animatronic of a dinosaur right there, so yeah, he's that old. So, you know, how are we going to solve that problem?
You have 10,000 crayons, draw a picture. Oh man, I got to pick which color. Like, this is going to take forever. What kind of green do I want the grass to be? You have 5. Okay, cool. I'm going to have something in 30 minutes for you. I like to take my time with my coloring projects, but yeah. And yeah, I mean, I'm also a musician. I did pretty much all the music for the show. And, you know, growing up, like what I had when I was first starting into making music, I had like a Tascam 4-track. You only had 4 tracks. That, you know, and the stuff that I did then, and I'm sure you guys all have similar experiences with whatever you do, is always going to be so much better because you had to use those limitations, and it really makes you think, and you start using your imagination. How can I make this work? Whereas now, you know, you have a DAW and you have unlimited tracks, and like I have a million plugins and this and that, and like I could waste time. What am I going to use on this? But having those limitations sometimes gives you that little push to get started.
And that ends up, it's funny because that ends up, like, talking about David Lynch, like, all these little things end up defining their style, regardless of if they didn't have budget or not. Like, that's what you appreciate him for. You know, people joke about, like, you know, Michael Bay doing a $300 million movie. He's still doing the exact same shots he did when he was doing Bad Boys. It's the same thing. He just has more money now, and you recognize them for what they do. And that's kind of a cool thing, is in your limitation, you define yourself.
You brought up, you know, challenges and things that come up, you know, with the budgets and stuff like that. I think if anybody out there, if you're trying to get into the music side of it, and I'm sure as well with, you know, like the more acting and visual side, it can happen as well. But I think one of the major challenges and things that we always got to be mindful of is that we're handling copyrighted material. Mm-hmm. And that's something, especially with the changing, you know, policies and stuff like that, with some of these, you know, like YouTube and stuff like that, you know, it could be legal 1 minute and then they change a policy and that same video is now potentially illegal. You know what I mean? So you do kind of have to be mindful of that. And luckily we've handled that very well. But then, you know, if you start getting into bands, again, like 1975 and Edward Sharp, you know, he's been amazing, you know, with us. So no real worries with that. But you got to respect that from, you know, some of the people you work with. And, you know, I think when there's the understanding of not only are you doing it for, you know, you're doing it because you have a love of doing it, but you have a love of bringing that person something they didn't think they needed, and once they see it and they know they like it or they love it, then it's suddenly that's worth the struggles and the challenges that come up.
Yeah, I started backing up my shows about 50 episodes ago, where it's like, okay, the master file, and keeping because of copyright changes and they start paying more attention upon it, okay, I might need to fix something. All right, at this time we have a few minutes for questions from our audience. If you have a question for our panelists, please raise your hand and a microphone will be brought to you. For those of you joining us online, please direct your questions to our online moderator who will try to accommodate any questions you have.
Hello? Hello? Oh, okay. So for the video guys up there, I guess this is a little bit more specific, but it's kind of broad. I have actually a film degree previous to coming to Full Sail, and one of the things I've thought about after getting out of film school is a lot of web series, right? I'm getting a lot better. Netflix has kind of proven this with House of Cards, other things like that. But there's people on YouTube that make really great content to the point where it's pushing the bounds of what YouTube can like almost handle on some level. And I'm thinking to myself, there has to be something coming in the next couple years that supports this medium and content where the budgets aren't crazy, but they're higher than YouTube, because people that I know that work on bigger projects or want to do indies that are like 50,000, 100,000, I'm like, what about YouTube? And they're like, no, I'm never going to touch it. I'm never going to do it because there's no way I'm going to get that money back. There's no way that my investment's going to get back, even with a bajillion views, right? Which they can't guarantee. Like, it seems like there has to be this middle ground that has to be coming, because that content is pushing that ceiling, and just, it seems like YouTube can't find it. And how do you guys feel as video guys? Do you think that's going to be happening anytime soon, or is that something you would like to see happening?
I mean, just from what I've gathered, that is a thing. Like I said, no matter what, YouTube right now, no one can kind of, like I said, put a number to what you'll get back when you invest in on it. But the thing you can't also figure out is, you know, what does that loyalty of viewership give to you when you put out quality content all the time? Because and this is where I think it ends up happening, is I feel like, you know, I don't know if YouTube will ever become the thing people are like 100% that's where you go for, but if a YouTube content people make a great series and they do, say, 20, 30 episodes of a really good series, it's getting a good amount of view every time. If those same people end up probably putting out a movie that goes into theaters, that 6 million views they get or whatever every single time, those people are going to go to that movie. So I think you use, and like I said, I think of YouTube as just, no matter what, you gain a lot from your viewership. I don't know how you're going to monetize it.
Well, what about like with Vine though? Like, I mean, do you think that there could be an example taken from Vine that could be applied to YouTube? Because you have guys like King Batch, like, who's getting like, you know,
he gets a lot of money, but like that's
$6 million.
But that's the thing though, is that he right now, I hate to say it, he's pretty good at guaranteeing a certain amount of what's the word? The loops. He's guaranteed that. So companies can kind of say, okay, well, if you give me X amount of this, I can give you this amount of money.
So do you think it could be a situation where if YouTube, like, content creators start killing it and they get similar attention?
Yes.
Okay,
it's kind of like I go back to that girl. What's her name? Most people like her. Jenna Marbles. Not all her stuff is great. Some of it's actually kind of funny. But the thing is, she puts out something consistently every week and normally gets like 3 and 4 and 5 million views on that thing. It's all about just, you know, putting out a guaranteed, at least good enough for your audience content, and your loyalship is all it really needs.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered that question, but
we don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. No, and it's not. It's funny. Even on a lower level, it's not like that. On a higher level too, they're asking the same questions. Yahoo wants to make wants to use web series. You know, CW is trying to do like everybody's trying to do web series, but no one can figure out how do we get our money back, because there is no guarantee for that. Because who here doesn't skip an ad when they see one? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Everybody skips your ad. So they can't go, well, they're watching our ad. Well, no, we're not. We're skipping it. We want to watch the show. You know what I mean? So that's the problem right now. You can't put a number to things on the internet.
I think, you know, hopefully the music video series applies to that. It's kind of a wild card. It really is, because, you know, there's so many different avenues that you can get or you can pursue to try to get viewership back on your series. Right, and, you know, with that, you know, of course, you're acquiring the most valuable asset, I think, is somebody's attention. You know what I mean? That's what makes this all possible, is acquiring somebody's attention and a loyalty. And I think when it comes to, and this is just my opinion, you know, when it comes to the internet realm, that's almost your most important currency, right? To have a dedicated, like, you mentioned the Jenna Marbles, because you're guaranteed at that point, enough people know she's guaranteed to deliver something, consistent, something that and with that guarantee, it kind of trickles down to, okay, now the advertisers are like, all right, cool, you have our attention. When somebody, what I would imagine when somebody starts a video series or a web series, especially like in acting or, comedy or anything like that, and you're starting from the ground up, that's what you're battling against. It's not, what I would imagine a little different than, being picked up on a network and then, that advertising in that realm, which I'm not incredibly versed on that side. But I think it's going to depend on the limitations and the avenues available to people on the web, and what that will be. And I feel like that's going to be so different for every individual case, because it's going to depend on your marketing, how you're reaching people, what kind of people you're getting. And again, Jenna Marbles would have done it one way, and then somebody like that I follow, like Marcus Johns, for example, he has an agency that specifically grows YouTube, famous people. They find talent, and then they do all the marketing and the heavy work for them, and then just blow them up. I think it's the same company that does Jimmy Tatro, who is another person that I follow. And you can see that step, and I've actually kind of seen some of these guys pre that agency, right? And then after, it's like the views just shot up, and they're creating more content, and it's more quality content, so on and so forth. So I feel it's a bit of a wild card. It really is, and it bears to see, what route individual people take to get that success. It's kind of unknown, like you were saying. It's a little hard to pin it down.
Beyond AdSense monetization, what are other ways to get your money, to get paid?
Actually, it's funny because I've heard a couple of stories. It's interesting too. Go back to people skipping commercials. Who here is on Vine? Who likes going to Vine? Anybody like a Vine here? Okay. When you watch your favorite Vine, or you watch something, you laugh, you enjoy it. Anytime you've seen a Vine where it feels like they're selling something, don't you automatically get annoyed? That's the thing that's interesting about trying to find ways to sell, is I think you have to show products and show things that make people want to buy them without selling it to them, which I know is I think it's an oxymoron, but I know specifically there are certain Viners who will get approached by companies not to make commercials, but to say wear their shirt or to wear their shoes and give them X amount of money, because the people will see that person wearing those shoes and then go, where can I get that? So you've now made a commercial for something that's their product without actually saying, hey, buy my shoes. You know what I mean? So that's, when I'm talking about making your money back, I think what has to happen is more clever advertising so that people will watch the thing they want, see something in it they might like, and then somehow find a way to go get it. But your money up front is just to say, how do I get that into my content without selling it to them?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, not to be a downer, but it's really, really challenging to monetize a podcast.
Right.
I would venture to say there's only probably a few dozen right now that are actually making a living and not having another job as a, they have another job as well as being a podcaster. So I wouldn't ever say, I'm going to quit everything and just be a podcaster. It likely won't happen. I won't say it will never happen, but it's probably not going to happen. We were lucky enough. We have a couple of sponsors. We're sponsored by Audible.com, and we're sponsored by Loot Crate. And how that sponsorship works is it's pretty easy. You probably hear, if you guys listen to a lot of podcasts, you'll probably hear them do the spiel at the beginning of the show. And if people sign up for either one of those services using your code, you get a little bit of money kicked back to you. And normally they're very open to having new shows. So I would say honestly, just approach them. I ran into the guys that run Loot Crate at a convention and talked to them for a while, and they said, sure, we'll sponsor your show. So it was that simple. So get out there again. Be personable. You are your own brand, and then go out there and ask for it. So
Yeah, and there are affiliate programs.
Yeah.
Where you can say, oh well, I send my listeners to Powell's books, as opposed to
an awesome
Amazon.
store. I love
They
that
could
one.
still go to Amazon. And so, yeah, they just give a certain percentage of whatever it is my listeners buy when they click on my link.
Yeah.
But yeah, so far I think I've paid for one drink with all of.
Yeah, I mean,
What I've,
it helps keep the lights on. It's
actually-
maybe buys you a burrito now and again, but
Right. So I mean, in terms of, I mean, the podcast doesn't. It's not exorbitant for me to run it. The labor is pretty terrific. I don't pay myself for that. But yeah, in terms of the affiliate programs, you know, if I had like 1 million more listeners, then I'm pretty sure it'd be
yeah,
pretty sweet.
maybe a couple burritos then, right?
I think, yeah, and to kind of feed off of that, you know, I think the leverage comes with the more, like you're saying, the viewership, and the stats that you have in your video content and in podcasts and stuff like that. And we've recently been really tapping into that, you know, through sponsorships, again, like you were saying. I mean, we haven't directly done, you know, product placement. You know, it's not something that we're really about in our series, but we have friends that have done music videos and stuff like that entirely paid for by product placement. You know, so those are some avenues that you know, again, with some leverage and with some clout and stuff like that, you could pursue. But it definitely takes a bit of work to get to that point. Like, for example, we're lucky to have Tito's Vodka, you know, sponsor our trip to South by, as well as, you know, our partnership with Consequence of Sound and Jukely, you know. But it took a minute to get there, you know, with our viewership and you know, the people that support us and stuff like that. So it is possible, but it's a little trickier. It really is.
It's interesting too, because even product placement is one of those things where, again, if you see blatant product placement, people if you see
They
a
turn
video
off,
on YouTube,
man.
they will comment, "Oh, product placement! No, 7-Up must have put a lot of money."
And there's at least 1,200
Yeah.
comments on that, you know, and it's
so
like,
it's,
you know,
it's weird how much people want stuff, but they don't want you to tell them to get it. They just want to see it and go, "I will buy that when I'm ready for it."
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, right?
Or God forbid you watch God forbid you watch a YouTube video with an ad that you can't skip. You're just like outraged.
Yeah.
You're
Right,
like,
right. And it's only like with the joke. It's only been around for all of about a year or two, where you can't skip an ad, and we think it's been around for forever at this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
We're all terrible people.
And it is a challenge. It really is, because you are, you know, at the end of it, I would assume any of you that would want to pursue that, obviously, you know, the creativity and the love of the talent and stuff like that is one thing, but you want to get paid.
Yeah.
You know, and it gets to a point where, you know, you want to get paid to grow your brand, you know, to grow what you do, and that's the natural progression of things. But there is a fine line, like you guys were saying, you know, that you don't want to turn off your viewers. You don't want to come off, you know, dishonest, or you don't want to come off like, you know, like you're trying to sell something. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to these online ventures is you know, not making it feel like you know, have a commercial thrown in your face every 5 seconds, and that it doesn't taint your art, your product, what you're standing behind, because that's very delicate.
Yep.
Do we have any online questions in the back? No? Okay.
Hi, how you guys doing? I appreciate y'all coming out here. I actually had a slight kind of technical question. I'm over here. Sorry.
That's loud.
Sorry, I didn't want to stand up with the cameras around, but as far as when you guys first produce yours, your outlets, I guess. So we've spoken about YouTube or Vimeo and these other outlets. Do you see the progression of web series as a whole and across all entertainment gravitating towards these larger companies that already provide that assisted hosting? Or do you still see a value in having your own website? Like eventually, obviously, as funding and so on and so forth allows, do you see it gravitating more towards these larger venues is my real question.
Well, I know we talked about, we do not have a proper website for our web series, and we had talked about that. Personally, I think it's good to have a hub, but I think that there's been so much that, you know, you can do with like your social media sites and things like that, that like it's not necessarily imperative, but I think as we continue to make more, it might make more sense to build it up. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like day one, like need to have it.
Again, but in doing that, you're doing the one thing, which is causing another step for people to have to go through. If I have a series that's on YouTube, people are gonna want to go to YouTube, find that series, and watch it there. They don't want to go to your website, then see your video, and then click. You know what I mean? Like adding another step throws people off for some reason, regardless if it's one extra step. That's why I think sometimes dedicating a website to your show is weird, because technically they can just watch it on YouTube, and that's where they'll 90% of the time go. As far as bigger companies kind of backing it, I think it's all on the same thing. Is like they won't back it until they know they can get something from.
Do you mean bigger companies like YouTube and Vimeo?
As far as hosting and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the other thing to think about too is because this actually was a conversation that we had as well, me and Dave, is you got to think of the infrastructure, right? Because our thing was Vimeo, high quality, high def, but we eventually kind of dropped it because the infrastructure wasn't, there in the way that YouTube could help us. You see what I'm saying? Because you could host it on your website, but thinking about, okay, what's the quickest way we can spread this out and make it viral and stuff like that. And at least for our purposes, YouTube seemed to do that the best, because we've tried things with Blip TV, which we still have things on there, but YouTube just kind of took our main thing. So we function currently mostly with YouTube because of the ability to reach out there more. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So that might be something to think about. And again, no matter, we're big, we're getting there, and we're doing great things. But to be valuable, to somebody, it's just going to be kind of a game of chance, because certain things have to fall in the right place for these corporations to now start looking at you like, okay, he's a player now in this game. What can we offer him? It takes a bit of work and the right moves to get to that.
Yeah, what really sucks is that the money has to come from somewhere. Like, that's the thing. And people want all this great content, but it's like, if you guys aren't going to pay for it, who is? Like, somebody's got to pay for this stuff.
Right.
Something I would always thought would end up happening is, like, everybody always get those weird things that circle around Facebook, like Facebook's starting to charge for something, 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 or YouTube's going to charge. Honestly, I don't see why, at some point it doesn't turn into your favorite YouTubers are on like a 50-cent subscription service where you end up kind of grab bagging all of the shows you want to watch onto your little channel. You spend $6, you've got all the things you'd want to watch. That money gets dispersed. But if they have 6 million people all spending 50 cents a dollar to watch their thing, that can give them the money to make something. So I think that's eventually where we're going to go, because people don't want to be sold. They want to pick what they want to watch, and they want to pay for what they want to pay for, but they don't want to pay much for it.
Right.
So.
All right, we have time for one more question. So in the back here, I'm going to take our online question.
Hello. Austin wants to know, are there any future projects we should be looking out from any of you coming up?
Well, we're working on Sword Coast Legends now. It's going to come out in 2015. So if you're a fan of RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, that's coming out. And we're doing our show every week, which is available on iTunes and every place else. So just look for Rated NA. And other than that, that's it for me.
On our end, if you want to look into it, offtheavenue.tv or North Avenue Studios can take you there as well. Our South by trip, the one that Dave is doing as we speak, we're going to be working with 30 pretty awesome bands. The Zombies, the Districts, Diarrhea Planet, which is I always laugh when I say that. But these really cool up and coming and are really established indie bands. That's our next big push. So offtheavenue.tv would be the best place to look for that.
Photography at this point is it's a thing we definitely created. We'd like to make more, but it's got to find a way to so we can. Sean now lives on the opposite side of the country from where we started. He's now in LA, so he's written stuff, but we're going forward. We have to figure out how to make it work with the schedule of the actors and all that. I know right now it's kind of making, I don't want to call it a festival run because it's not a short film, but there's a lot of comedy festivals that's been added to, so we're waiting to hear back from them. And if people decide they want more of that, then we give them more of that. And if not, we always are looking to make whatever's going to be next.
Yeah, we have a few projects on our plates, and but in the meantime, we do have one more episode that is going to come out, and you can find it on YouTube. Fauxtography, Fauxtography show. And
I was like, did he spell that right? Yeah.
I was like, man, don't mess this up.
Photography, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a few other things that we're cooking up, and like Justin had said earlier, we sort of have a really good core team that we'll all be working on other things, whether it is photography or something else.
Music too.
Yeah, we got some music stuff going on, so it's cool.
All right, so everybody help me thank our panelists for a great session. And we do have to clear the room for another session to prep for, so just make sure that you don't forget your belongings. And also, if you like swag, the last panelist left some swag from an upcoming movie about Aladdin in the corner over there, so you can take that quickly if you'd like.